Do you have trouble staffing in your laundromat? Getting tired of covering shifts? Feel like you own a job rather than a business? That's what this episode is all about, staffing your laundromats and the art of it and what we've learned over the last 13 years in the industry. Let's do it.
Okay, before we get started on today's episode, we do want to take a moment to remind you of a very cool opportunity that we just started on our website. If you haven't heard about it yet, it's the Laundromat Millionaire community. It is a membership where you can gain access to everything that we have about laundromats. So products that we've created, forms you can download, all kinds of stuff that we use in our laundromat that you can use in yours. Even a searchable video library in case you're researching the industry or certain aspects of the industry.
Yeah, you get discounts. You get the ability to chat with me in a more intimate setting on very specific topics. You get distributor and product reviews from users in the community. It's a behind the scenes intimate community that I'm very involved in. We're very passionate about, and we'd love for you to check it out on our website. Go to laundromatmillionaire.com, click on the community tab and see what it's all about.
All right, so today is definitely a hot topic, staffing. Everyone has issues with it. We can't say that we have the miracle cure for you, but we do have some pointers because we have been there and we're at a pretty good place now. And there's been a lot of different things we've done over the years. And we've been through a bunch of different organizational charts, you might say. We've been the sole employee of the entire facility up to what we are today, which is, a staff of close to 40 people. But all through it, we've had different challenges in staffing, and we want to help you learn what we've learned along the way and how we have the reliable, amazing staff that we have today.
Yep, absolutely. I say it all the time. I'd put our staff up against anyone in the country. That's not a brag on us. That's a brag on them. But the truth is, it's been a lot of trial and error. We've stolen a few cheats from some of you maybe watching out there, a few tips and tricks and ideas. Maybe you wrote an article in Planet Laundry magazine and I stole the little golden nugget out of that. There's been a lot of that kind of stuff, but over 12, 13 years, you just kind of keep banging your head against the wall and refuse to do the same thing over and over again. That's the key. That's a lot of what we've been doing. And obviously, without even addressing it, this starts and stops with finding and attracting quality human beings. Easier said than done. Well, that's what we'd all like to do. If that was the answer, then we wouldn't need a podcast for it. But let's just put that precursor out there that if you focus on that obsessively when you're hiring people and promoting people and things like that, you're going to be way ahead of the curve. But I'm guessing you already knew that. There is a little bit of an art to that too that we probably won't jump into a ton of today. But I think that kind of goes without saying.
And I know all over the country, everyone's having staffing issues right now. So this isn't just specific to laundromats, but there are some things that make it, I think, even harder in the laundromat industry. I mean, how many other places do you run your business with only one employee there, as many laundromats are?
I mean, top of my head, I can't think of any. I'm sure there are some, but few and far between. Mom and pop grocery store, maybe?
Maybe, not much. So that kind of adds a whole nother layer to our issue, because if you have one employee that fails to show up or calls in sick and you only had the one scheduled, it's not like, oh, you can just be short staffed and the other person can cover. It adds a whole nother element to our staffing needs.
Yeah. Well, I think when you take that a step further, Carla, and this I guess maybe applies to like a convenience store too sometimes, when you take it a step further and you say, okay, I'm relying on one person, it's an all or nothing proposition, but then that one person is typically some level of an entry-level employee. They're not exactly an MBA making six figures. They're not always going to be the most reliable person. By the time you put those two things together, I think you've just built kind of a natural barrier to the ability to staff. As everyone listening right now is nodding their heads. Yeah, we get it. So what we're going to try to do is, as Carla said, we don't claim to have cracked the code, but we've definitely gotten a lot better at it. And so what we're going to do is just share that very authentically with you. As I always say, take half of it, take 20% of it, take one golden nugget, or take the whole thing. However you want to do it, we're just here to help.
Yes. So the big keys, we've kind of broken it into kind of 3 parts, what we find to be our keys to staffing your laundromat successfully. The first thing we're going to talk about is the versatility of your facility. So going into the way your facility is actually designed to make staffing easier. The second thing we're going to talk about today is hiring quality people. Obviously, but we're going to talk about how the things we do to get those quality people. And it's not just one thing. It's not just compensate them highly enough, because that's not enough.
That's not always the answer. Usually it's not the answer. I know we like to think that it is, like that's just the answer. I can't pay them $50 an hour. I wish I could. And so we throw our hands up. And that's just not the right approach to it. There is an art to it. Money does matter, of course.
Yes.
But there's many other things that matter to people, especially if you get to know them on an individual level.
Yeah. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is how we do our scheduling to create those redundancies or backups, where when you're just relying on one person, you have something already in place if that person is a no-show or has to call in.
Yep. There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right, they want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible, and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks, and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today, or visit draintroughs.com.
So we're going to go through all 3 of those, starting first with how to build your facility to better accommodate your staffing needs.
Yeah. So this is actually fairly simplistic. You may have some or all of these things already in place. I hope you do. Maybe you're just not leveraging or using them in the right way. We believe that every laundromat should be built so that it can be unattended. I'll say it again. Every laundromat should be built. It's not our store, in our opinion, should be built so that it can be unattended. We think that's actually one of the foundational problems to a lot of staffing issues out there, is that stores are built so that they can't. It's not a matter of your business model. We are fully attended. We definitely weren't always fully attended.
Yeah, I think the big key here is if you have a staffing issue, but your facility can be run unattended, that's the difference between you closing for the day or you still being able to operate. It just gives you that flexibility, because no matter how many redundancies, when we get to that, talking about how we do our scheduling, things happen.
Yep.
And because of the way we build our facilities, even when those things happen, we don't have to close. Yeah, we might have to be unattended it could be for a day or it could be for a half hour, but we have that flexibility.
Yeah. So what we've done is kind of broken this down into 4 core things. I can't think of anything I forgot. There may be some little ones in here. There's 4 things. It's really 3, and then 1 depends on if you're open 24 hours or not. So the first one is to build we call it your drop-off room, but your employee area, whatever you want to call it, so that it can be secured. The way we do that is by just framing up a 5, 6, 8 foot, whatever you want window. We put a granite countertop in so it looks nice and professional, tile the front wall, that type of stuff, to make it look nice. But at the end of the day, all you have to do is lock the doors and have some type of a roll down security door. And in a matter of 2 seconds, you can secure your entire employee area. That's the first mistake, in my opinion, that many, many, many laundromat operators make, is, and I know I'll fully admit, like, it doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as the nice, window, granite countertops and open air and pendant lighting and the whole. I get it. I get why people don't want to do it, but the reality is, in this business model, it's just functional. So you can dress it up and make it nice, but in our opinion, that's one of the most important things you can do when it comes to the facility. The second one is having a separate alarm system. Now, hopefully you have at least one. I know some people don't, but hopefully you have at least one alarm system. We actually have 2 alarm systems in our store that work independent of each other. One of them is what we call the drop-off room or the employee area. It's on a separate security system, same company, separate security system, separate alarm panel, the whole 9 yards. So you could walk into our store as a customer if we are unattended, and you have access to what we call the retail area of the store, the self-serve area, doing wash, dry, fold, that type of thing, without never need to go into the employee area. You can get to the change machine, et cetera, ATM machine, all those things are out in the retail area of the store. And that's on a separate alarm system. So that's
Which
the
I
front
think you
doors
could,
and things like that.
You could use one alarm system because I know they have zones that they could do. So you could possibly use one alarm system and just zone it for the different areas where certain zones are secured. Because I know we do that in our house where only certain alarm things are activated.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So it would be a possibility, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Regardless of how you set it up, it's all about being able to secure the back employee area. What you don't want is customers coming into your store, especially if you're open 24 hours or something like that, breaking into a door into the drop-off room and not having an alarm active because the alarm is all or nothing. So that's the second aspect to it. The third aspect to it is just having a video surveillance system in your store. You don't need a separate one for that, but you definitely need, depending on the size of the space, 2, 4, 6 cameras in your employee area so that you can see what's going on in that area in addition to the retail area of the store. Once again, I know some laundromats don't have alarm systems at all. Some don't have video surveillance systems at all. These are things you'll want to consider, and they do require a little bit of an investment in equipment and installation, but the monthly costs are very, very reasonable. The last one is what we call an access control system, automated access control system. And this is if you're not 24 hours, and we'll explain this in a minute. If you are 24 hours, you don't need an access control system. But those are really the 4 key things that you need in your facility to be able to set up your store for success when it comes to staffing. And it really all boils down to what Carla just said. Build the store as if you're going to be unattended, and then staff as if you'll always be attended. And what ends up happening is, let's say you jump in the middle there and you got this hot mess on your hands, which we've all been there. Morning employee calls off, so the owner goes in and covers a shift. Afternoon employee calls off or quits or walks out or whatever. Next thing you know, the owner worked a 16-hour day and couldn't even leave to get a sandwich. Like literally, just unless you want to lock your store and kick everybody out, you can't leave your store. What we always say is, even if that's not how you want to run your business, because by the way, it's not how we want to run our business, it's important to have that facility design in there so that worst case scenario you can. Imagine how nice it would be if you as the owner did have to work a 16-hour day, but you, because you didn't want to be unattended, but you could leave for an hour and a half, go have a nice sit-down lunch, the store would be fine, you'd secure the back room, you might be right across the street at a restaurant eating, you can see your building, but you just get to leave for an hour or two. Like just those little things when it comes to life as a business owner, as a small business owner, really make a big difference in what's not going to be a fun day in either scenario. And then even a step further, Carla, during COVID, this is being shot in, early 2023 at this point. But during COVID, there was all kinds of staffing issues. And we had an amazing team, but half of them were scared to death to leave their house. And our stores were essential. When we were deemed essential, we didn't really want to close. But we also didn't want to insist on our staffing going in, and that even includes our managers.
Yeah.
So for a couple months there, me and Carla every day, just in the morning, we went from one store, cleaned, next store, clean, next store, clean, next store, cleaned, and then in the evening, we did it again and locked all 4 of them up, just as a means to an end. We didn't do much business. There wasn't many customers in there. We wore a mask, but that's a kind of a worst case scenario there, and it allowed us to continue to keep our stores open and serve the public even in a pandemic.
Yeah.
So.
Just to hit on, I know you briefly covered automated access control system. Just to clarify what that is, you're talking about so automatic locks on the doors and stuff like that you can control from somewhere else?
So there's a couple different ways you can do this. One of them is you can just get automatic door locks, and they're on timers. They just open and close, and that's all they do. They're typically magnetic. They go on your retail front doors, and they're just on a timer, and they just unlock the magnetism or lock the magnetism and open and close the door. That's a very plain Jane basic way of doing it, less expensive, of course. What we've done and what we recommend you do if you have the budget for it is a full, what they call automated access control system. This is a type of security panel system that any security company in your area can install for you. And it has an entire brain, for lack of a better term. So you can connect the wiring to your lighting system. You can connect it to certain outlets that maybe have an open sign on them. You can connect it to the front doors. You can connect it to the alarm system. And all you do is take all these electronic or electric things and run a dry contact over to the access control system. And that access control system now controls the power to all of those things. You could have 13 different things connected to it. And when it arms, it kills them all. And when it does, vice versa. So what our stores look like, because we're fully attended, but we're not 24 hours. What our stores look like is 7 a.m. in the morning, the stores open automatically. There's no one there. The back room is secure. The front doors open and unlock. The alarm system goes off. The open signs come on. The radio comes on. The TV comes on. And customers just walk right in and help themselves. The reason we do that, as a side note, is we do that as what we call a cheat code in the payroll system. So we're open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. The automated access control system at all of our stores opens the store at 7 a.m., but our staff doesn't actually arrive until 9. Now, the store is clean from the night before. And if a customer were to have a problem or something like that, I mean, a staff member is going to be there typically within an hour or so. So that's how we've set up our store to kind of cheat. When you have 4 stores, we can cheat an hour and a half to 2 hours of payroll out of the beginning of the day. And it doesn't really ever negatively affect the customer experience, because that's our big thing. If we're going to save payroll, save labor, things like that, we don't want to do that at the expense of our customer experience. So an access control system lets you do that. If you're open 24 hours, not an issue. You just leave the store run as it is all night. But if you're not open 24 hours, an access control system is a really nice thing to do. Or at a minimum, you'd need to leave your lights on all day long and then just turn on and off or lock and unlock the front doors.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is hiring those quality people. This is a big one. Getting the good people working for you, the reliable people that you can count on, that do a good job. And not surprisingly, compensation is part of that. What we talk about is there's kind of different tiers of applicants out there. And you need to pay enough to kind of get to that second tier. First tier is entry-level employee, like the same thing that they're paying at every McDonald's and Burger King and Walmart. And, it's the high school kid's job or somebody who's looking for a job, but, we used to say it's minimum wage, but nowadays minimum wage doesn't even get you anyone. Right. So, but that's kind of the entry-level employee. We're looking for someone a little bit above that. So we've got to pay a little bit above that. Yes, that does mean maybe our prices are higher. You've got to do what you have to do to get your business to that level where you can afford these higher level people.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind, we're not looking for someone that's making $100,000 and has an MBA and things like that. What we're typically looking at is about $4 to $5 an hour above minimum wage. Now, that's a moving target, especially in some markets right now. Labor pools are different. But whatever you have to do in your market to get to that second tier labor pool is kind of what we're looking at. And what we've learned through talking to different people in the staffing world and things like that is whether that's $4, $5, or $8 an hour above minimum wage, it's a moving target. You always got to be kind of watching the market. But at the end of the day, unless you're looking for someone that is going to be 100% unreliable and do some pretty awful things in your business, then you're going to want that second tier labor pool. So as Carla mentioned, you're going to have to build a business model that allows you to compensate for that. And that's why a lot of people, when they go from unattended to attended, they add drop-off laundry services, they add drop-off dry cleaning and wholesale that out, pickup and delivery. This is one of the reasons that we're so passionate about the ability and the need for what we call the modernized laundromat to be really a full-service laundry center. I mean, we really believe, it's unfortunate, but we really believe over the next 10 or 15 years that our industry is slowly evolving to kind of the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots are going to be the basic unattended stores that don't do anything else, have low or moderate prices at best, and don't do a great amount of turns per day. The haves are going to be the other end of the spectrum, and there'll be a couple things. They could be just a basic laundromat that just does a high volume. They could be a basic laundromat that has really good prices, but that's all they do is, and by basic, I don't mean not a nice facility. I mean, that's all they do is self-serve laundry. They don't do drop-off, dry cleaning, anything like that. And then the most lucrative business model out there by far is a full-service laundry center, which is obviously what we run now. And when you bring in additional revenue streams, especially when they're tens of thousands of dollars a month, pickup and delivery, drop-off laundry, dry cleaning, even having premium pricing on your self-serve machines and things like that, it really makes a big difference. And if you build a little bit different business model than maybe you have right now, I think you'll learn that it'll actually solve some of your problems. I hear a lot of laundromat operators say all the time, oh, I don't want to do drop-off. I don't want to do pickup and delivery. I don't even want to be attended. And then they're kind of owned by their business, right? So a big part of being able to compensate, whether it's a bonus structure, which we're also big fans of, or their baseline compensation for a GM, an assistant GM, a store manager, which we have all those positions in our operations, the different layers of management, or even paying your attendants a fair wage. Or not fair wage, but just a wage where you can get that second tier labor pool. It's really important that you have the income to do it, because you can sit here and listen to everything we say, and if you don't have any income, it doesn't matter. So that's a big part of it too. Now, going down that line a little bit further of how to find and attract reliable and quality employees is benefits. Now, benefits, everybody always goes right to like health insurance and things like that, and we do provide health insurance for our management and our leadership team, but we don't for our attendants. But you can provide 3 PTO days a year. You can provide company uniforms. You can provide free laundry. There's a $40 a week is what we give our attendants for free laundry as a bonus structure. You can do a lot of different things, but that's part of that compensation package as a whole. And when we're talking about entry-level employees, a lot of times we think we can't afford those things. And in some cases you can't, like an attendant. But in other cases you might be able to, but it might involve pivoting your business model a little bit. Another thing that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to attracting quality people is training. It sounds crazy, but if you happen to pay minimum wage and you attract a rockstar employee to your store, let's say by accident, right? They come into your store, and within a matter of a week or two, they can see that you have no training guides, you have no accountability, you have no management, you have no schedule, you're just winging it. If one person calls off, it's the owner has to come in 100% of the time. You come across as an amateurish business, whether you should and want that or not. And to that second tier labor pool, you come across as a place that, quite frankly, they don't want to work. It's unorganized. And
it's frustrating.
Right.
They have higher expectations.
Yep. They have higher expectations of you, and you should have higher expectations of your store. So it sounds strange, but actually have an amazing training program with checklists and cheat sheets and supervisors and accountability for training and certain processes and procedures and employee handbooks and things like that. Not rocket science. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but having those things in place where you feel like a professional, well-organized company, it actually helps you attract and retain a better quality person, that second tier labor pool.
A lot of the documents that we use, like our handbook and some of our job descriptions and job
standard operating procedures, things like that. They're all part of our community. So I don't know if you know.
So you can find them, and they're free downloads if you join the Laundromat Millionaire community on our website. So just throwing that out there as another resource for you.
Yep, absolutely. We have, as a side note, we have business plan templates and other things like that are free on our website, even if you aren't in the community. But if you are in the community, there's a monthly membership for that. But you get access to what I call the whole treasure trove of kind of how Queen City Laundry works and runs and operates. And as we improve those things, we update those things. So those are always provided as part of the community membership. If you aren't familiar with that, go check it out on our website, because we just launched it, what's it been, Carla, 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah,
and we've already got like 60, 80 members, something like that. So it's growing fast. It's a community where we have chat rooms and things like that. And so we're pretty excited about it. Just
There's
another
a
resource.
searchable video library if you're looking for other resources, other videos. But anyway.
Another thing that kind of goes in line with that beyond the training is the company culture. We hear all the time, despite the fact that we're just a laundromat, we hear all the time, wow, I've never worked at a place like this before. Like, you guys get along and you have fun and you laugh and you enjoy each other's company. And this seems like a really cool place to work. A new employee, it's not going to make them fill out an application. Don't get me wrong. The pay is pretty much going to do that. But if you have
It'll
that
help
positive,
with the retention.
yes, but if you have that positive company culture, it will absolutely help you to retain them. What it will also do when it comes to attracting clients or attracting new employees is when you're tapping into your team or your personal networks to attract people to your facility to work there. If you have a friend that works at Queen City Laundry and they love their job and they're well compensated and they have fun and they say, this is the best job I've ever had. If you're their best friend, you're more likely to apply for a job there because all you do is speak highly of the place that they work, whether it's how the owner treats you at Christmas time or whatever that looks like. These all go in. Do not believe for a second that they don't matter. Just something as simple as pulling an employee aside that's having a rough time and just saying, hey, I realize there's nothing I can do for you, but I just want you to know that I care about you. I'm praying for you. If there is something that I can do, please let me know. I know your mom's been in the hospital. And by the way, as you build a leadership team and a management team, that doesn't come naturally to everybody. So you have to coach those people up and you have to train those people and teach them to have what you hopefully have, which is a heart full of empathy, because that feeds back into your company culture. Now, there's a fine line between that and being a pushover and being naive. I'm not suggesting that we go there either, but these things do matter. The last
Something little we even do for an idea is our GM, we pay for her once a month to take an employee out to lunch just to make connections, get to know that person. So every month it's a different person and, she can charge it on the company account. So,
Yep, absolutely.
Something little.
Absolutely. We actually insist that she do that. And sometimes it's with her assistant GM, somebody right below them that's also highly compensated. Sometimes it's with a delivery driver. Sometimes it's with a store attendant. And now we've gotten to the point where we actually have our assistant GMs do that on occasion too. So it's part of that company culture. And as we mentioned, we didn't used to do any of this, okay? Any of this. Most of this has come to fruition in the last 3-4 years where we've really been able to polish it up. We've had some semblance of some of these things, but we've really been able to streamline this and just really make an amazing company culture in the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of that is having the people, having the time, having the right hearts, and yes, having the budget to take somebody out to lunch and things like that. The last aspect of it is offering upward mobility. I always tell people, don't dangle a carrot. Don't dangle that carrot when you have no intention of actually giving it to them. But if there's a true opportunity for upward mobility in your company, then you should be promoting that and offering that and not promising that, but just simply saying, yeah. I mean, if you look at our GM and our 2 store managers and our assistant GM, they all started as store attendants. And I'll tell them, I don't really have these conversations much anymore. Our GM and our assistant GMs do. But we'll tell them when we're interviewing, yeah, I mean, we don't plan on, losing our GM or anything, but I can tell you that the owner's ambitious. We're always looking to grow the company, whether it's number of customers or stores or expansion or different things. We don't know what the future looks like, but all we know is that, hey, I started as an attendant. Our GM is famous for telling people, yeah, all I used to do is wait tables. And now I'm running a multi-million-dollar company. And she's earned every bit of that. So that's part of it. So compensation, bonus structure, benefits, training, company culture, upward mobility. Don't get overwhelmed by that, okay? I know a lot of people that may be listening out there are just like, how could I possibly afford one of those things, let alone all those things? Once again, look at your business model. Is your business model in line? Are you charging the right prices? Is your revenue the right place? What's your competitive analysis in your market? Should you be doing pickup and delivery? And by the way, I want to throw this out there and then we'll move on to number 3, Carla. So many people in this industry assume that the owner is working so hard, covering shifts, all these things now, and they are worn out. And this is supposed to be a means to an end to make my life better, not worse. And so they automatically assume, well, if I build this business and make it more complex, then that's more work for me. And there are times, I mean, there's peaks and valleys for sure where you got to get in there and get in the weeds because you're making some big change or you're hiring somebody or you promoted somebody. There are times where for a few months you might have to jump in and supplement the process, especially if you don't have a bunch of capital on hand. But the fact of the matter is, as you create these different revenue streams, and in our case, these different companies, you're going to create such a huge amount of revenue that you're not used to having in net profit that you're going to be able and should be reinvesting a percentage of that as the company grows. That's what we did. And we'll kind of share that with you.
But anyway, let's move on to number 3. So the third key that we've found to solve our staffing issues is to create our schedules with built-in redundancies or backups. We know as soon as someone calls off, who's covering for them or what the procedure is. Now, I can't say that we've always had this perfect.
Definitely not for sure.
and it's definitely a lot easier now that, we have 30 to 40 employees as opposed to starting off when it was kind of just Dave. So it's definitely been a process as we've grown through different evolutions of what our laundromat looked like.
And honestly, Carla, that's why we wanted to do this episode. We don't, as she mentioned in the beginning, we don't claim to have all the information. We just want to share with you kind of what we've done, where we started, what we did back in the good old days when we were smaller and had one store, and kind of what we do now. So that's what we're going to do now is kind of jump into that. So the first thing that I want to, I don't know if reassure you is the right word, give you a little confidence on, is don't worry so much about where we are right now. That's just the goal, right? That's just the target. If you're running a marathon, and clearly I'm not a runner, but if you're running a marathon, you're not going to worry about the last mile of the marathon at the start gate. You're going to worry about the first one. So let us give you a little reassurance there is it's okay to just start where you are. And part of the reason we're going to actually break down kind of quickly our journey from when we first got in the industry is because we kind of started in almost the worst case scenario. So we're going to run through some of this fairly quickly because we don't want to bore you too much. And then the kind of what we do nowadays, we'll dig into it a little bit more detail. Hopefully that'll help you. So most of you know, in 2010, we bought an unattended laundromat in Amelia, Ohio, suburb of Cincinnati, was open 24 hours a day. Carla had a career with a 1-hour commute in this direction. I had a career with a 1-hour commute in the opposite direction, believe it or not. And we had 3 babies at home. So it was kind of crazy town at our house. We had, we had no attendance, and I would basically get up. I worked at 7 a.m. I would get up at 5 a.m. and go up to the store and clean up from the night before. Then I would go to work. My way home from work, I would go to the store, clean up again from the day's business. And then a lot of times I would go in again that evening once we put the kids to bed and clean up or pick up again. Now, obviously, I didn't do that forever. That was a means to an end, but we had tons of issues. What that time frame really showed for us is in a fairly short time, I fell in love with the industry and the impact and the opportunity as we, made the store nicer. And we didn't have a ton of money, but we had some. We borrowed some money for new equipment and things like that and kind of grew the business. One of the things we realized is while that was fine, that was a means to an end. We realized this isn't for us.
It needed to be temporary.
Yes. We're okay with, pretty much doing anything that's legal and ethical temporarily, but this was definitely not a life that we wanted, even if I were able to quit my full-time job. So as we took a look at the industry as a whole, and when we looked at kind of our problems, we were like, you know what? A lot of laundromat owners are owned by their business. We didn't want that to be us long-term. We realized that was us in the here and now. And so we wanted to look. And so I kind of went on this journey of how do other people do it? Maybe most people do it this way. Other people have to do it different ways. What does that look like? And then what does it look like for us? How do we get there? And we knew it would be maybe not a 10-year journey, which is what it ended up being. But we knew there would be a journey involved there. We would have to drastically grow the revenue of the business in order to justify and compensate people and build layers of management and things like that. But that was something we were up for.
So let's talk about where we started. So we started with basically him cleaning before and after work. And then that was really just not even the full first year. You were still doing that, but within a few months.
About 5 months.
Within a few months, we were able to get revenues to a place where we were no longer just losing money. Sure. We were actually making money. And so we used some of that to reinvest and started hiring people. It started with part-time person who would come in and clean up, and then it became, okay, a full-time person, and, adding cameras so we could see that they were doing their job correctly, having them text and tell us when they got there and when they left, just so that we knew, hey, somebody has shown up to clean the store.
Yeah, and early on, I mean, we had 1 and then eventually 2 and 3 employees, all very, very part-time, just coming in working a couple hours. And she's exactly right. They would come into work 9 to 11. And I was at work. I was at the phone company climbing telephone poles, and so I would have them text me. And all they would do is text me, I'm here. That's it. That's the only text I would get. If I didn't get that text by 9 a.m., I was pulling up the cameras on my phone, looking to see if they were there. Did they forget to text me? And then I would text them, don't forget to text me. That was literally like it's
very high tech.
You may be laughing, but I mean, that's literally what we did. And you may be laughing because that's what you still do. And that's okay, by the way. But that's how we started out. From there, we got to the point where we said, okay, let's take one of these 3 employees and make them kind of a trainer. So when we do lose people, because we lost them often back then, when we lose people, we bring somebody else in. Dave doesn't have to take a vacation day off at work to train these people, or 2 days off work, or go in the evening and train, which is what I did in the beginning. So we just paid them a little bit more money, made them a trainer. They weren't a manager, weren't a supervisor. Everybody reported to me. Then we went a step further and created an employee handbook. And by the way, back then, it was nothing special. We created cleaning checklists and things like that, and even standard operating procedures for how to clean the bathroom and different things, very basic things on pieces of paper that were laminated and stapled together, not complicated stuff. That was the beginning of the journey. And so if that's where you are right now, that's totally okay. That's where we were. We get it. So then we moved forward. So to kind of compartmentalize about a 5-year journey here and not bore you too much with this, from 2011 to 2016, that 5-year window, we went from 1 store to 4 stores. We brought on a full-time manager. Her name's Marlene, and she's now our general manager. We went from attended to partially attended. And then we went from partially attended to what I call more partially attended. And then we went to fully attended. And when we got to fully attended, we added drop-off laundry service to our stores to try to generate more revenue and things like that. And then at the end of that 5-year window in 2016, we added pickup and delivery. Now, for those of you that know our pickup and delivery story, the first couple of years we lost money on pickup and delivery, but we eventually made really good money on pickup and delivery, which actually helped us build out what today looks like our leadership team, which is 2 assistant GMs and a GM. If we had never built those revenue streams and those separate businesses within our facility, we couldn't afford anywhere near the team that we have now, and I would still be more of a backup than I am.
Also, those extra revenue streams really enable you to offer that bonus structure where they can get a higher compensation, but it's directly tied to your revenue. So as your revenue increases, they're getting compensated more, but it's not you having to actually raise the wage.
Yeah, what she's kind of referring to there, without going too deep, is like our attendants get a bonus based on if they do a pound of drop-off laundry, they get 10 cents a pound. But then our store managers get a bonus based on each pound of laundry that goes through their store. So we didn't give them an hourly raise, but as the store grows and we market and grow but drop-off laundry, that store manager's compensation has grown drastically over the years because of that.
And it gives them some real ownership of the store. I mean, they truly care about how well their store does.
Yeah, think about an employee at maybe a bad example, but Lowe's or something, when the store is really, really busy on a Saturday in the spring, they're kind of annoyed. They're kind of put off because they're still making $15 an hour or whatever. When our drop-off laundry gets busy and booming and all this stuff, my manager actually gets excited. She's excited to solve the problem, whether it's at one particular store, all the stores, when we add dry cleaning, and then pickup and delivery too. That bonus structure applies to our leadership team. So each of our 2 assistant GMs and our GM get a bonus based on every pound of laundry that the entire company does for wash, dry, fold, and pickup and delivery. And so once again, as we grow the company, we create more stress and more pain points and more systems and more processes. They're motivated and incentivized because they kind of get sort of a profit sharing sharing. If we do double the business of pickup and delivery next year, their bonus will be double of what it is this year. Meanwhile, their hourly wage or their salary doesn't really change at all. And to be honest with you, it really hasn't changed in years because, I mean, they don't really ask because they're making more money than they ever have. But if they did ever ask, I would point that out to them. I mean, sorry, you're not going to get a raise in your salary when your bonus has doubled over the last 3 years. But they don't really even ask is the point. So anyway, so now what we want to do is take a look at kind of our staff and break it down for, I know we kind of went like high level, but now we want to kind of take it down and show you kind of what that structure looks like when it comes to scheduling and things like that on kind of a plain Jane level. And once again, maybe you're not at a level where you can copy this, but maybe there's some ideas in here that'll help you to solve problems for yourself. Maybe you're more in the middle of the road of the journey we're describing for you. Today, how we manage, schedule, and staff our business is pretty simple. Our stores are staffed from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. That's roughly 91 hours of payroll. Now, each store has a store manager that in most cases is full-time. There are occasions where they're part-time, but typically full-time. And that's very intentional. Our store manager actually acts as an attendant and a store manager simultaneously. So they're cleaning the store, they're doing customer service, they'll process drop-off laundry, but they do spend about half of their time handling administrative things and staffing things and discipline if needed, and letting me know that something's out of order, or letting know our maintenance guy that something's out of order, or letting know our assistant GM that supplies need to be ordered, handling inventory and managerial duties, if you will. But the beauty of that is if you have 90 hours of payroll in a week and you're a rock star employee, that's your solid foundation for that store, handles 40 of them, you're already way ahead of the curve. So that's one part of how we set up our business. Now, I know some people that operate their businesses and that's their whole payroll. The rest of the time they're unattended. They have a manager and that's it. But what we do is we supplement that with typically about 3 to 4 part-time employees. And depending on their availability and things like that, they'll work anywhere from 1 or 2 shifts a week to maybe 20, 25 hours a week at that store. We also have 4 stores that are all within about 10 miles of each other. And so if an attendant wants more hours or wants to be more part-time, as we call it, then we will cross-train them at our other stores. And that builds up more of the opportunity for backups and redundancies. If a person calls off, the odds are it's probably not a store manager because they're typically not in that situation if they're calling off very often. If it's an attendant and we need to call someone in, the first thing they'll do is start to call in the staff that's off for that store. And then the next thing they'll do is try to call in the staff from the other stores. But because every process and procedure is identical at Queen City Laundry, the handbook is the same, they all work for the same company, they can very easily just go from this store to this store. And all they have to do is work one shift there to be able to be called in. So the people that are ambitious and want more hours and things like that, they're willing to be cross-trained and we're willing to make that investment in them. Another thing we do when we're setting together the staffing and stuff is we also have the attendance shifts overlap by 30 minutes. And so say, for example, we have an employee work in the morning from 9 to 4. We might have another employee work from 4 to 10 at night, but they don't come in at 4. They come in at 3:30.
So why do you do that? What's the point?
We do that for a couple reasons. The main one we do that is we have a philosophy of it's not if they're going to call off, but when. And so when they call off sick or they are late for work or whatever, there's a couple aspects to it. One of them is we have a 30-day or 30-minute window built in there, and it does a couple things. We've learned that when we back their shifts right up to each other, if the afternoon attendant is 10 minutes late, one, it irritates the morning attendant because they plan on getting off at 3 o'clock and you're not here at 3. If they're scheduled at 3 and you're supposed to be there at 3, but they're or 2:30, what ends up happening is if they're 5 or 10 minutes late, it's the morning shift attendant or sometimes manager's responsibility to actually call that person and find out where are you. Typically, when they're 5 minutes late or more is when we'll start calling and say, where are you? If you're just running late, okay, great. We have a 30-minute buffer built in there. If you're not calling in or it's really you just abandon your shift, I mean, if you're calling in after your shift starts, you have a problem to begin with, you should be calling in no more than 15 or 20 minutes before the start of your shift, and that gives us about an hour window. Yeah. So what we're trying to do when it comes to redundancies and scheduling is we're trying to plan for these things. But part of the reason that we have what we call a cheat built into our payroll system in the morning is we're actually, even though we call ourselves fully attended, we're unattended from 7 to 9 in the morning. A part of the reason we do that is because it's slow and we don't really need someone there. The store is clean. But a part of the reason we do that is we've learned over the years that we can kind of steal or cheat an hour or two of payroll out of the morning every morning. And the idea was we took that and used it to build in redundancies. So our payroll is the same as if we were staffed from 7 or 8 in the morning. Our payroll doesn't change. We're not investing more in that half hour, but we can overlap them by that time. The cool thing, Carla, is when someone does come in for their normal shift at 2:30 and you don't get off till 3, the staff spends a half an hour together.
Yeah.
And they actually love that because they never get to work together. So it's really tough for them to build relationships and get to know each other. Company culture, right? That might be the store manager that's there and they get a half an hour to get to know their new employee or their existing employee or somebody that came from another store that they don't really know that well. That's part of it too, is you're just building in that company culture, but more importantly, you're building in redundancies. Now, assuming that person, let's say, abandoned their job and 10 minutes into the shift, the morning person has figured out they're not coming in. We now have 20 minutes to call someone in and get them there. Most of our employees live pretty close by. Typically, if they can come in, they can usually come in. They can usually get there within a half an hour or so. So it's not a big deal. If they can't get there within a half an hour, they can almost always get there within an hour. And so worst case scenario, we'll either be unattended for that half hour because we can, or we'll ask the morning person if it's okay if they stay.
Yeah.
And they know that that's part of their job. They're not required to. Our philosophy is you don't have to always say yes, but you can't always say no. That's our philosophy. This is a team game here. If you're always saying no, you're going to have a problem, but we don't expect you to always say yes.
So what happens when someone calls in and the manager of that store cannot find anyone to take that shift? And first, just answer that. That's what happens.
So the primary responsibility when you are a store manager of a store is to cover unstaffed hours. Now, keep in mind, kind of like you don't always have to say yes or can't always say no type thing. With the store managers, we don't expect them to just live their life around the store. They understand that if it's a Sunday at 3:00, leaving is not an option. Now, if it's Wednesday at 6, they understand they can leave. But because of the way our system with the automatic system is, it doesn't lock the store automatically, but it does unlock the store in the morning. So the store manager could hypothetically leave, have dinner with their family, come back at 9:00, and run off any hangers-on that are there that are hiding in the bathroom or whatever, make sure the store is clean and the garbage is cleaned up. They could just leave for 2 or 3 hours, come back, but they're ultimately responsible for making sure that their store is secure. Now, keep in mind, we have store managers at each store, but then we have a leadership team. We didn't always have them, but we do now. So they work as a team. I mean, we have store managers, we have 2 assistant GMs, and a GM. If the GM happens to live 5 minutes from one of our stores, which she does, and she knows that they're just having a rough go of it with staffing, then, we practice grace with each other and we have a team. It's a team effort. And we'll say, hey, tell you what, you stay till 6. I know you've been there since 8 in the morning. You stay till 6:30. I'll be there at 8. I'll clean up and lock up, and you can just enjoy the evening with your family. It's a day-by-day thing, but ultimately, the store manager's primary responsibility is for their store under all circumstances. But that doesn't necessarily mean we expect them to work a 14-hour day. But what it boils down to is, as we've built additional layers of management throughout the years, all we've done is build additional redundancies. So if you have if you have one store, you don't have redundancies to pull from another store. If you have 2 stores, now you can cross-train people. If you have one store manager that runs 2 stores, you have less layers of management there. If you have a store manager at each store, now you can cover for each other. And then the last thing that I'll tell you that's really not even on our notes, Carla, is when we're hiring and staffing all of our stores, we practice something called overhiring. We do this in every aspect of our business, and we didn't always do this. Our philosophy with every position in our company, other than managers, of course, is to overhire. So if we have 2 attendant positions open, we will always hire 4 people. If we have 1 driver position, we will hire 2 at all times. The reason we do, and by the way, we communicate that with these people. It's not a secret. The reason we do that is over 13 years in the industry and all the growth we've done, all the investment we've made, with that philosophy, we've never had too many rock stars. We've never had too many amazing people where we couldn't keep them all happy. And so our goal is to keep our rock stars happy first, and then our middle of the roads happy, and whoever's left over should have stepped their game up. But we're very transparent. This is not a secret. This is not manipulation. We tell them, regardless of the position you're in, this is a production position, even if you're an hourly store attendant. If you're wondering why you're not getting enough hours, it's because you're at the bottom of the barrel. Like you're not reliable, you're not trustworthy, we're having to get on you about playing on your phone, the bathroom isn't as clean as the way you were trained for it to be clean. If you want a job and you want the hours, step up. Typically what happens is one of two things. They either, assuming they're at the bottom of the barrel and not getting hours, is they step up their game and they become a better level employee than they should have, and they're rewarded, and there's almost always something right there alongside of them that's slipping. Or what a lot of times happens is they just leave. You know, we don't want that. We're not trying to force anybody out. But when that happens, all you're doing is losing your, let's call them your utility player, your bench player.
Your least productive employee.
Your least productive employee. And as soon as we do that, we will go and overhire again. So we lose that person, we will hire again. Now, if we're hiring, you know, say we're fully staffed and we're hiring for excess capacity, which is what we call it. The candidates that we're hiring and training, we will tell them that. Just so you know, we're actually fully staffed. We have 4 positions for delivery drivers. This is a 5th, and this is what the position looks like. Right now, our 4 drivers are keeping up and handling everything. That person that isn't scheduled as much, that's also the person that gets the first call when somebody calls off. So another layer of redundancy. Even if you're not that great of an employee and you're not getting the hours you want, and we do try to call you in, if you want to pay your electric bill, you're probably going to come in, right? And so what ends up happening is we've created this system of processes between our facilities and our management team and our culture and our tier 2 labor pool and all these different things where it's this really symbiotic relationship. I'm not here to tell you that it's perfect. And a big part of why that synergy works is, yes, because we have 4 stores. So if you're saying, oh, well, I only have 1 store, all we're trying to do in this episode is share with you how we've done this, because we have evolved up the staircase from the bottom step to, I don't know about the top step, but we're definitely on the staircase somewhere. We're always looking to improve the processes. So whether it's taking over hiring into consideration, a lot of, I mean, trust me, we have a big heart. We care about our employees. The last thing we want to do is hire somebody and give them no hours, but we will tell them what the position is. But we will also tell them, we're not hiring you to fill this position. We're hiring you as a means of overhiring. Who falls into that category of the bottom of the staircase is up to them. Well, if you're hiring somebody that's a rock star, they're just like, well, I'm going to come in and make sure I'm so valuable that you put me on the schedule. And we go, okay, that sounds good to us. So what ends up happening is you create kind of this competitive culture where the people that don't really want to work and don't want to be productive and don't love the company and don't feed into the company culture and all these amazing things that happen, they just kind of weed themselves out. But it is a process. And the beauty to the whole thing is if you lose your overhires or your bench players or whatever you want to call them, if you lose those people, guess what you are? You're still fully staffed. And when you're fully staffed, that's pretty great, because then when you go to hire those redundant positions, you don't have to panic. You have to panic if you need 5 people and you only have 2. You got to hire anybody that walks through the door and ask them if they'll start today. Make sense?
So we've talked about having these redundancies and that now we don't have many issues with not being staffed, but things happen.
Yep.
So what if we have a store that no matter what, the manager can't come in, can't find anybody, we are short-staffed, that store is going to have to be unattended that day?
Great question. Also, one of the benefits of having 4 stores. Make no mistake, no 4 stores are the same, right? We have a behemoth of a store. You've probably seen it on YouTube and stuff. We have another one that's pretty big. We have another one that's decent size. We have another one that's smaller but is a hopping little store and does a lot of business for us. And there's an ebb and a flow to that. There's always one that's a little bit more, a little bit less than the other. It depends on the day of the week and things like that too. But part of the redundancies is we know we might not always be able to have all 4 stores fully staffed. But part of the reason we cross-train is because we prioritize. Our biggest store does the most dry cleaning and the most drop-off laundry, and it has drivers coming and going with pickup and delivery. Somebody needs to be there. That is priority number one. Our next busiest store happens to be our smallest store, but it does a ton of drop-off too. And so a store could do a ton of self-serve, and it can still be unattended for 3 or 4 hours and be totally fine. So a lot of it's based on the window, the counter. How important, how vital is it that someone is there? And if they're not there, are we losing revenue versus just going unattended for a couple of hours? So that's part of the factors too. It's part of the redundancies of kind of this, we call it a puzzle, but kind of a moving target, if you will. And we will take, if we have somebody that's maybe a little bit less reliable than others, we might kind of staff them at a store that's a little bit less of a priority. And we don't want them to call off, but if we do, it's already kind of built in that, well, that store would be the one we'd pull someone from anyways. If the opposite happens, we will absolutely call over to this store 4 miles away and say, we need you to lock up the drop-off room and go over to this store because it's more important that you're there. If you're at this store, we might lose $10 an hour. If you're at this store, you might lose $200 an hour. Yeah. And so part of that is a factor too. And then the last thing is one of our stores is in a little bit rougher neighborhood. And so we don't like that store to be attended very long, unattended very long either. So kind of the last piece to the puzzle is just the store itself. I understand if you only have 1 store or you might have 40 stores, you can do more of this or less of this. But these are the things that we've learned along the years, and we just wanted to share this with you because obviously I'm active on Facebook and things like that, and I see all these different conversations, and I remember the days. Now it's really not a problem for me. I never get called anymore because of the layers of management we have. But there was plenty of times where I was doing that. And there was times where I can say this now because I don't work at Cincinnati Bell anymore. But there was times where I called off work at my job because I had to go into my store because of X, Y, and Z. And it's a tough place to be. And so we thought if we put this podcast episode out here, it might help you find some golden nuggets and be able to staff and run your business better, which we believe is one of the keys to a modernized laundromat.
Yes. So hopefully you found some golden nuggets in this, and hopefully your staffing concerns will be less than they are today, tomorrow.
Yep. Hey, I say it all the time, right, Carla? The goal isn't to be anyone else. The goal is just to be better tomorrow than yesterday. So if you can implement a new policy and procedure, any one of the things we've rambled about for the last hour, maybe makes your staffing not great, just a little bit better than it was before you watched this episode. That's our goal for you. Okay? All right. For Dave and Carla Menz in Cincinnati, Ohio, we will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care, everyone.
Bye.